Local lawmakers in D.C. are weighing in today on how the crisis in Ukraine is expected to impact us here in West Michigan.
Political reporter Rick Albin talked with Congressman Fred Upton about the crisis and its impact on gas prices and what he thinks about the chances for the possible invasion of other countries overseas.
We are in day 2 of the invasion of Ukraine, a country that you visited as your role from the Energy and Commerce Committee. We know that a lot of this has to do with energy, particularly given the situation of Russia. What is your take on this, and what, as a country, should we be doing if we aren't already doing enough?
Well, a couple things. First of all, the sanctions are in place, and I think, as we look at the news this morning, that there may be more sanctions coming, particularly if the Russians continue to move towards Kyiv. I mean, that's a big concern. But here at home, there's real concerns too. I mean, already we knew that we were expecting to see $4 gasoline by spring, at least by mid to late spring. This is going to accelerate that dramatically with the price of oil now over $100 a barrel. We'll see that in the short term, and who knows how far it goes. Already in California, I know they have over $5 gas. It's going to continue to go up. We have to send the signal to the international markets that we're prepared to increase our domestic production here. Now, the price of oil in the futures market, all of that, it's supply and demand. And if we send the signal, and we've got legislation that I hope we can maybe move through our committee, we'll see. We don't have the gavel. But there's a bill to reauthorize the Keystone Pipeline. We've got more than 140 co-sponsors on that. I think you'll see that come into play in terms of a bigger push when Congress comes back next Monday. But also the whole issue of LNG, liquefied natural gas supplies. The Department of Energy has been sitting on a good number of applications as we try to export LNG. We have plenty of it here. We can do that, and we can lower the price. Again, supply and demand has a big play here, but also it helps our allies, NATO allies, and certainly offsets what Russia is planning to do with their Nord Stream 2 pipeline that's, at least for now, shut down.
When you think about this activity that Putin has decided to engage in, there are a couple of different issues. Obviously, there is an economic issue that we have just discussed. There's a real humanitarian issue, too, and I appreciate the fact Ukraine is not a NATO member, but should we as a country be preparing for his expansionist activities to end up in some of the Baltics or in Poland? Well,
I think we have to be prepared for that. Putin, despite diplomatic pressure, not only from us, but the UK, from France, from Germany, one-on-one meetings over the last couple of weeks, he never backed off from expanding the number of troops there on the border. Particularly, we expect 190, 200,000 folks there. I mean, it was a big attack. It's a democracy. No, Ukraine is not a member of NATO. I don't think they ever were going to be a member of NATO for some time. It's more of a defensive coalition of countries that, of course, have been in place really since World War II. But I don't think Putin's going to, unless we can really show, strength pushing back. I don't think necessarily he's going to stop here. So whether that's other NATO countries, and of course we have an ironclad agreement that we'll all defend each other, but there's other countries there along the eastern front of Europe that could be for the taking as well. And then, of course, it sends a signal, what's China going to do with Taiwan and the influence there in the South China Sea? So this is a time for the test is going to be strong in terms of our resolve in working with our allies to try and push back hard.
We're also hearing from Representative Bill Huizenga. He talked to Rick about the role he believes the U.S. should be playing in all of this.
What is it that the United States should or could be doing from your perspective?
Well, and I hate to go back too far, but in the not too distant past, the Ukrainian government asked for additional military support, specifically Javelin missiles, anti-tank missiles, and some other things. The Biden administration denied that. They had sent some, but not enough, clearly. So now it seems to me we've got a responsibility to get them as much military aid as we possibly can, which is going to be far more difficult now if the reports are true that the Russians are in charge of a number of the airports, certainly the ports, the actual seaports themselves, and we're not sure what the land crossings might look like. But we do have to get them military support so that they are able to fight their own war. The other thing that we need to do is we need to send the right messages to the world about our own energy production. This is ludicrous and frankly just idiocy to have the federal government ban fracking and ban oil exploration and energy production on federal land right now as we are begging OPEC, and by the way, the number 3 largest producer of energy and oil, Russia, to open up the spigots. On every single dollar that we see in an increase in that price goes directly into Vladimir Putin's pocket, which allows him to do these types of things.
You just mentioned a minute ago, you want to get the equipment to the Ukrainians to fight their own war. At some point, when this incursion gets into a NATO country, then it, to some degree, becomes our war, doesn't it?
Not some degree. Article 5 says it is our war. We have a treaty obligation to defend any NATO country that is invaded or attacked. All right. The Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are very, very nervous right now. The Michigan National Guard has a training exercise annually with Estonia. All right, and they've got very close relationships there. So this gets home very, very quickly. And you look at what's been happening. There are former satellite states of the Soviet Union, Poland being one of those, that are now a part of NATO. And when you start hearing Vladimir Putin with his revisionist history talk about Lithuania and Poland and how they're made up and they really aren't countries, and the same thing with Ukraine, I mean, this gives you a little insight into what he views the world order should look like. And I'm getting more and more convinced that he is really, truly trying to recapture the footprint of the Soviet Union.
If it's not bad enough that we're watching the, I don't know what other word to use than murder of innocent individuals in Ukraine, what do we make of President Putin's comments about anyone who intervenes will, and I'm paraphrasing here, receive a retaliation like they have never seen before? Does that threat as ominous as it sounds?
Well, I think it's real. I think they have a very, very high capacity for cyber warfare. And these days, cyber warfare is a significant part of any conflict that we are seeing between any kind of major powers. We're not talking warlords in some backwater. We're talking about technology-driven, very sophisticated, strategic disruption of societies. And that is a real thing. So we've got to be on a war footing for us personally here in the United States. NATO has to be on a war footing for that as well. And we have to be prepared to have Russia expand their aggression beyond Ukraine and beyond just that region by using things like cyber warfare.